Start. Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sunil Jain. I'm the opinion editor of the Financial Express. With me is
Subhomoy Bhattacharjee. I'm deputy editor in an Express.
We're here to discuss, basically a quick reaction to what the budget looked like. And obviously, our views will have to keep getting fine-tuned as we get the budget papers, as we look at the fine print. You'd have seen that the markets, for example, were quite euphoric when the budget began. They went up a little bit. When we came to Part B, they went down. Then suddenly, somebody saw the fine print, the markets collapsed, then they came back again. So I think our discussion is going to be a bit like that, right?
Right. I think that this is a budget actually which is much more nuanced than Pranab's budget last time. Okay. So there are lots of issues and things that Chidambaram has obviously built in. And those, I suppose, will get reflected as the budget goes on. Even on the superficial reading of it, there are so many issues which are positive and negative if one looks at it from the market point of view. I suppose that's what the market is reacting to.
But sort of, Subhomoy, on average, would you say it's a lackluster budget? Is it a dream budget? Is it a budget which is actually, you know where we are? We are in deep trouble. The economy is stalled, projects are stalled, nothing is happening.
Yeah, I would say
is this a budget which is going to kick that back up, or is it a budget which is cosmetic? What is your quick sense of it?
I would say it's a wake-up budget instead of a dream budget. It's definitely not anybody's dream, and I think he's already the tax measures would definitely be the ones on the super rich and others would definitely not be something that the market.
Okay, I've got a quick question for you. Are you going to be going and putting your money in that all women's bank which he's going to set up? That kind of a surprise, really.
Yeah, that kind of surprise, really. But you know what? The RBI regulations are very clear that you can't have a specialized bank, and RBI gives only universal banking license. So even if you set up a women's bank, I suppose what he means in a way is that the initial set of employees would be women. But after that, the bank would have to more or less follow the same lines.
Okay, we'll figure that out. But tell me, just very quickly, what was your sense? What is your sense? Firstly, let's ask the first question. We've begun the year with a 5 to 5.5% growth. Are we going to see a 6.5% to 7% growth, which is what the finance minister is budgeting in FY14?
That's exactly what I wonder, Sunil, because despite whatever is there's not too much money on the table. So essentially, the finance minister is not able to provide hard cash to support sectors. The one that is doing for the in terms of raising the budgetary outlay for a large range of projects, that's simply every year's budget. You just increase it by a certain quantum amount as you go along. There's not much to read in there. But in terms of changing the financing of issues and projects, he's depending more on changing the way you do business. And in fact, that's what he said at the beginning. And that's what he's relying on. So it is definitely going to be the economy and the movement of the economy rather than any direction that's coming from the budget as such to push it towards a particular direction. I would say that.
Okay, so Subhomoy making a point that that we've got about 7.5 to 8 lakh crore rupees of stalled projects. So it's getting those stalled projects off the ground which is going to be more important rather than what the finance minister has announced in the budget per se. That's short point you're making.
Because how do you look at the subsidy numbers? When you look at them, do they seem very the way that the finance minister had said we would be cutting them drastically to make space for economic development? Do you get that sense?
It depends on how you look at the numbers. If you look at the subsidy numbers last year, they were about, I think we've overshot them by about 50 to 60,000 crore rupees this year,
right,
in FY13. What the finance minister has done is that he's reduced that number by about 30 to 40,000 crore in FY14. So how do we explain this? So I would suspect that he is actually taking into account the fact that there will be a larger increase in diesel prices. So he's actually, saying that the diesel prices will go up, so there will be a little bit less of subsidy, which I'll have to, give out. I think the one big positive to my mind is that while most of us are looking at the food security bill being this big gargantuan kind of, problem, he is given only 10,000 crore rupees more for the
food security. But this is the first year.
Yeah, which means that it's going to be staggered. I'm just saying, it was a bad idea to begin with, but he's going to stagger it. To my mind, Subhomoy, the joker in the pack is that when he's talking about this subsidy number, which is a little bit lower than 30,000 crore lower than what it was in FY13, how much of this is a fudge? And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. If you look at the FY13 numbers, the current year's numbers, about 60,000 crore rupees is subsidies that the minister has not taken into account because he will be paying them to the oil companies and the fertilizer companies later.
Right.
What we need to know is that of that number which he's got for FY14, how much of it is something which is just basically deferred payment on his part?
True. Out of the first 2 lakh for 20,000 that he has, Another 40,000 would come in the very first supplementary budget because the oil companies would be due with the results in April, and before that they would be needing the payment. That's for the last fiscal. So immediately 40,000 crore out of that 2,20,000 goes. So that leaves you 1,80,000, which is about the same as what you started with last year.
Shubha, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my list of 4 or 5 good things that the budget has done. I want you to add to that list or to subtract from that list. Then I'll give you my list of the bad things the budget has done. Obviously, Mauritius will be the top of that list, and then you add or subtract to that.
So just before that, what do you make of the disinvestment number of 55,000 crore?
Shubha, it's a huge number. I don't think we've had that number in a long time. But, if the finance minister does certain things, I think some of these things can happen. I'll tell you why I'm saying this here. He's got about 18,000 crore rupees which Anil Agarwal has promised to give him for Sterlite and Hindustan Zinc. He's got, the shares held by Suti, the former UTI. Those shares are worth 40,000 crore rupees. So if the finance minister wants, I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but I'm saying if the finance minister wants, there are enough PSUs out there which can be disinvested, which can give him that money.
Right.
So I'm not worried about the possibility of it happening. I'm looking at the probability. That is a different thing. But you've seen in this year also, we've had about 25,000 crores of disinvestment so far. And I think, I'm not certain, it's about 6 or 7 or 8,000 crores that have been put in by LIC. So it's not actually disinvestment, it's what you would call quasi disinvestment.
So that means next year you've got to have on a LIC again coughing up a bit of amount. Of course, the last few disinvestments did have the FIIs coming in and investing heavy. So I suppose that is something that
the sentiment eventually is what needs to work. Okay, let me give you my list of the good things. Okay, I've actually put them down, so let me read them. The top of my list, for example, is the possibility of getting coal privatization. He said that the coal minister is going to be making an announcement soon. So hopefully, that might happen. I think there's going to, he's announced that there's going to be rationalizing of the centrally sponsored schemes, which is a good thing. There are just too many of them. They were unwieldy. It was a waste of time, waste of money. The fact that there's going to be an investment allowance has been brought back. I think that's good because we are in an investment famine right now. That's very good. I think, as we were saying, the minimum amount of money being put for the food security bill is good. There's a very interesting thing, I think there's credit enhancement for infrastructure, which is very clearly a good thing. The infrastructure, the tax-free bond for infrastructure is a good thing. Shubha, I don't know whether you paid much attention to it, but there's a 10,000 rupee scholarship or a one-time payment that he's going to give to anybody who passes a certain exam for skilling it.
Right.
Now, as a journalist, I'm skeptical. I'm saying, it'll just be money which is stolen. But, assuming the things go to plan, I think, a 10,000 rupee incentive for a person to get a degree in plumbing or to become a carpenter and then get a job, I think that's a good start. It represents a different way of thinking. So that's my list of good things. You tell me yours. Do you have any?
I would think that I'm not very sure with the tax-free bonds because this year too they managed to get only about 30,000 crore out of the 60,000 crore that was given to them.
So there's no appetite.
So there's no appetite in the market, and these were good institutions. So essentially, there's a problem there. The very good thing I would say is much more sense of order in the capital markets. And the thing that I really like is the changing of the way you handle FIIs. We've been over the years.
What is FII? What is FII?
Yeah, we have this cat and mouse game about FIIs, QFIs. Then there are the sub accounts, participatory notes. He's cleaned them up and saying there's just one depository participant, no matter wherever you are from the world. Come in, register with the DP, and then the SEBI will do a common KYC and let you into the market. I think that's a very good move that sort of cleans up the market and makes it much more transparent and answers lots of questions.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give you my bad list. Okay, my bad list, as I told you, was the first on my list it's in the explanatory memorandum. I don't know whether you've had time to look at it yet, but in the explanatory memorandum, what the minister has said is. And by the way, what the minister has said is that a tax residency certificate for Mauritius is a good thing, but it's not enough to give you a tax break. So what that means is there are a whole lot of FIIs who are coming in through Mauritius. You had an Azadi Bachao Andolan report, judgment by the Supreme Court. And the government seemed to say that, okay, at one time they said, Mauritius may or may not be a good idea, but the point is that for whatever reason, as a country, we've decided that we need the FII. So you told the guy that you can come in through Mauritius, and if the Mauritian government gives you, or the taxman gives you a certificate saying yes, you are a bona fide resident of Mauritius, that's good enough. but that there's a little statement out there which says that this is no longer good enough. It's necessary but not sufficient. I think that opens a little bit of a tax window,
Right.
and for the taxman. And
Because the Shom committee had said that it should be necessary and sufficient.
yeah, but they've in fact talking about Shom, there's another thing. What Shom for example had made it very clear that we don't like retrospective taxation, and if we have a retrospective taxation, this is really the Vodafone case.
Right.
If we have retrospective taxation, it has to be on the seller, not the buyer. There's not one word on retrospective taxation. Subhomoy, over the last few weeks, we've seen the chairman or the chairperson of Shell coming in saying that a $1 billion demand on her was completely arbitrary, absurd, bad practice, taxing of FDI and stuff like that. There's not one word in the budget on fixing that. And frankly, you and I are both safe because we don't get caught by this surcharge on the rich. But frankly, a surcharge.
The surcharge doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, it's simply a way of saying that look, I have paid my tribute to the idea of socialism, and that it has to be there. And since it was talked about by a particular section of the party, so you have to say it. It really doesn't do anything. It just creates anybody's intention. Instead of writing 1 crore, he just simply puts a -1 and gets the 999 lakh and gets away. That's just about it.
So then you mean there's going to be more tax sort of evasion because of this rather than anything else?
Yeah, there are more smart ways of going about it. I mean, for instance, I like the idea that he's saying that we want to make tax administration much more technology friendly, much more savvy, and much more able.
The AIR returns.
The setting up of the LTUs, the large taxpayer units. These are good things. But if you're going to be believing that, then obviously those are the ways to go about tracking the guys. I mean, the 42,000 crore people that have given the tax returns of 1 crore is also coming out with the same system of tracking. So use it, deepen it. I mean, I don't see much percentage in just annoying a particular section or whatever and getting a very small peanuts and creating a problem.
Are you sort of worried by the revenue assumptions? Do they look very aggressive to you? A 19% increase in tax collection in a year where GDP is going to be about 6%. Does that worry you?
I thought I will come to it finally. Yes. These are the numbers which actually didn't hold last year. They didn't hold even the year before last. So it is essentially saying that I am banking on a 6.5% rate of growth plus a 7% inflation.
And a very big tax buoyancy.
To get me home. And that home is something which is, frankly speaking, dependent on lots of things, because these are not, I mean, the first quarter itself, the third quarter GDP results of for 2012-13 is going to be out, is going to be less than 5%. So from there to travel to 6.5 is itself a big jump. And to take all these numbers and to expect that they'll start adding up. But I suppose, frankly speaking, if he had, his degree of freedom on taxation was limited. I mean, there's really not much that he could do in terms of raising additional taxes. And he's cleaned up some. So of course, I don't like the idea of, this 6% tax on mobile. I mean, mobile is so much central piece to our lots of things that we are doing. And why create these sort of irritants and remind people that I am the finance minister, I have taxed you, and therefore.
Yeah, there's a lot of these small little things. I'm doing this for for air-conditioned restaurants, non-air conditioned. Some of that has carried on. But tell me, if you just summarize this, I say the finance minister, to be fair to him, didn't have too many options.
That's right.
So within the space that he has he presented a budget which to your mind is a good budget? Or has he presented a budget which is just neither here nor there? Let's put it this way, is this going to be a budget that Chidambaram is going to be remembered for? Or is this going to be one of those kind of budgets that, oh God, thank God it's over, and let's get on with life?
Listen, I would say this is not a budget which is not a lackluster. I would say it's trying to do the good things, except that in doing the good things, he could have gone the whole hog, which he sort of refrained from doing. And so therefore, it just falls short of being the game changer that possibly it could have been.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. That's Subhomoy Bhattacharjee. I'm Sunil Jain, and I hope you enjoyed listening to us. Thank you. Till next time. Bye-bye.